So now we're at video 2. Um, Thanks for tuning back in. Today we're going to talk about um, setting up flight sim, doing your pre-flight check, and doing your initial takeoff and landing, your first one. So if you have um, X-Plane, you can follow my settings. If you have Microsoft Flight Sim, you're going to have to try and follow along the best you can. I'm on a Mac, I don't have it. Um, and just try to choose the same airport and everything else is me. Once you've mastered these skills, you can take them around. But um, you're bound to be frustrated if you don't, if you're trying to play around in your local airport while you're still trying to figure out the basics when you could just follow along exactly with what I'm doing at the airports I choose. So today we're going to be taking off from KVLL runway 28 in X-Plane. I think it still says 27. Um, I don't recall offhand, but we're going to do it. So I have X-Plane loaded up, and first we're going to choose the Cessna Skyhawk. Now, there's two variants in X-Plane 11. There's the normal one. This is the what we call the six-pack. It's got glass instrument. It's got like gauge instruments, steam gauges. And this is the G1000, which is got a glass cockpit, like single pane of glass where it overlays the maps and everything else. That is awesome, but we're going to start out with the basics and get it real easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to change our location. We're going to do KVLL, Kilo Victor Lima Lima. We are going to start on 27. Like I said, they haven't updated this, but in real life that's 28. And again, 727 MSL. We're going to make sure it's a clear day, kind of midday time. I had some wind in here. We don't want that. You could later choose to do real world conditions. For when you're learning, please do not. Um, you can choose CAVOC if there's stuff filled in. That just means clear. Um, there's no wind, um, and visibility is great. Runway's dry. You know, we're not going in hard mode yet. Um, and at this time of day, we're going to have good light. There's no weather to be worried about. So we'll choose start a new flight. So before we take off, we're going to click this button and check all of our controls. I have the SciTech Preflight yoke. It's technically what it is. It's a Logitech set that Logitech rebranded. And right here you can see I'm going to check my pitch control and make sure that the normal travel does the normal response right here. And then I'm going to do roll. That is my right to left stick like that. And I'm on a laptop. This is on my lap. It's not ideal. Ideally, I'd attach this to a table, but I like my recliner. Then we're going to check my rudder pedals. I'm going to want to make sure that I have good yaw control, and that my toe brakes do what I expect. I'm not terribly enthusiastic about the level of yaw control I have here. You know, it's at the tightness I like, but like these pedals kind of slip on my hardwood floor a little bit, so I can only give so much pressure. Yeah, because then I moved the pedals. So if I had any complaints about the setup, it would be, I wish I could bolt it to the floor. Um, if you wanted to set up, you know, something like, let's say you are using Preflight for whatever reason, we could do that at this time. Choose devices, make sure X-Plane's enabled, and then you can now see it says X-Plane connected. And now I'm showing up as KVLL instead of my actual house. I like the altitude callouts and stuff. So I've mapped some of these controls. I have my flaps set up to this control in my yoke over here. My hat on the left is set up as a view control. And, you know, on a normal plane, we would quickly check the ailerons. We would check the elevator, which we can't really see. If we use the up arrow, we can look up a little bit, and this is a more realistic view from this airplane. There's my rudder. And then I've set my fire button here on this side to reset my view. Then my 3 front buttons, one of them I've mapped to the outside, and in one of these levels I'll show you why I did it. I love to land in this mode because it helps me build my sight picture a little better. I also like to make sure I can see the nose cone right here. If you're flying with a mouse, this is going to be a little trickier. Out of pure habit, I make sure that my transponder is set up alt encoding 1200. You know, I'm beneath the mode C veil of a Class C airport, so we always want to make sure our transponder's on. Usually it doesn't really matter if you're in a flight sim, but you know, we've got some other skills that I'm hoping I'll pass on to you. Then this right here handles the trim. In real life, there is no electric trim. That controls this knob here. We'll be trimming the flight when we get to altitude. Right now, we'll zoom in here because I screwed with it and make sure it's set for takeoff. And this controls the pressure of our flight controls, and that's super important. We'll get to that. So we're here, we're on 2.8. We would have usually made our call. You know, this is, what do they call this in flight, in this game? N172SP. So we would usually say Oakland Troy traffic, N172SP, taking off from runway 28, departing to the north, Oakland Troy traffic. And we would release our brakes. Where do I have that mapped? Well, I'm just going to hit both toe brakes, which should release that brake down there. We can go down here and see if they're released, and they are. If this is your parking brake, if it's like this, that's your parking brake is on, your parking brake is off. Normal pre-flight check, we would check that. We would usually check these. This should be set to both. On a high wing, we don't really have to switch tanks typically, but it's there. I like to get a little bit up. All right, so next thing we're going to do, we're going to add a little bit of right rudder. We're going to take our flight controls. We'll dial back the right rudder a little bit. We're going to go full throttle. Now we see the airspeed coming up right there on the left. We're going to pull back and we're airborne. Gonna need just a little bit of right rudder. We're gonna wanna tilt, and then your altimeter right here, we're going to let that get to about 1,200 feet in this case, just to get clear of all obstructions. We're kind of wanting to be at about right about there for our climb out, where we get max climb. You're going to have to adjust how far you're pulling back to kind of keep that. Change our yoke a little bit like that. We're at about 1,200 feet. I'm going to start my right turn here, gentle. We're going to make sure it's coordinated right here. We're getting a little more pitch than I want. Try to keep it right about there. And use the rudder to step on that. We call it stepping on the ball. Now we're going to straighten out. We're continuing to climb through 2,500 feet here. Remember to keep an eye over here. We're still doing good on our max climb. We could go a little bit harder and climb faster. We have the thrust. We're doing good here. Just want to stay level. And we get up to 1,200 feet. And I really kind of want to stay around 30 degrees bearing. Heading right here. This is your heading. And we're coming up on 2,500 feet, so I'm going to slowly kind of bring the horizon level here. It can be difficult to feel, in this case, where we're going as far as height and altitude and all of that, because you're lacking that seat of the pants sort of feel. So this right here is our vertical speed indicator. It will show us what our current climb rate is, or descent rate. Up here ahead of me, this is that lake I was talking about, so we're doing just fine. Right here on my Preflight, you can see we're headed right for it. So we're doing perfectly. And we really want to get our nose down at this point because we are climbing too much. Let's start a little descent here to get back to 2,500 feet. Our speeds come up quite a bit, and we're still, these are lagging indicators. So you got to understand, when you make changes, they take a minute to reflect. So up here, we're starting to redline the engine, so we're going to bump our throttle back a little bit. You want to remember power, pitch, speed, and trim. So let's get this power back to the mid-range somewhere. Make sure that we are pitched the way we want to be pitched, where we're just kind of staying level. This is good. We're dropping a little bit, so we'll add a little bit more elevator there. There we're roughly stable. So now we're going to use the trim, which I've mapped here. We're going to dial that in so that we don't have to keep the pressure on the controls. If you can see the nose of the plane, it's a little easier. That's why I keep pushing up. As you can see, our speed dropped down a little bit as I'm no longer descending. So unless I want to start descending, I'm going to need to add a little more throttle there. Kind of keep it in the middle of the green. and we're doing all right. We're right around 2,500 feet. We're stabilized. We're not pushing. We're not holding this yoke for dear life. Um, Ideally, I should be able to let go of it, and it would keep the altitude. It's not, so I'm going to trim it a little bit further down. But we're doing good. So remember, don't put your eyes in here too much. Once we get to 2,500 feet, we're at a safe speed. We're level, coordinated. We're at the right heading. We have the right thrust going on here, and we're not climbing or descending too much. Then we should have our eyes out here, and we should be looking at this horizon. We should be looking at our landmarks and kind of figuring out our next step, because everything comes faster than you expect in a plane. So we're going right around 110 to 120 miles an hour. Oh, this is not my usual plane that I do in person. It's in miles per hour, so it's a little weird going back and forth. It's nautical miles per hour versus miles per hour, right? So anyway, now that I'm coming over here, what I want to do is look around for the city of Romeo. So we're coming up over Washington. Looking back at our chart here, we're not quite over Stony Creek yet. We're just coming up on it. So we're going to wait until we've cleared Stony Creek, which will be here in a few minutes. If you've used a skew, just hit the fire button. If you've mapped it like I do, pop up a little bit so you can see the nose, and we'll just keep it level. Looks like we're going to do our gauge scan, and looks like I went up a little bit, so we're going to push that nose back down. Still, we're keeping our engine RPM good, our speed's good, and we're in a mild descent at this point, which is just fine. Even if we keep it going, we're getting pretty close to the airport, and we need to get to that 1,700 feet. So, ordinarily, we'd be switching over to the CTAF for this airport, start to make our call saying, November 172 Sierra Papa, coming into Romeo from the south. We're going to land on runway 18, and we're about probably 5 or 6 miles out. Romeo traffic. So I'm pretty sure we're seeing the airport right here. There's a golf course and some other stuff we were looking at on the map before. There's the road. So I'm relatively certain this is our airport. We're going to come in left traffic because this is a left traffic airport. On that chart it would show an L. Almost every airport is an L unless there's some other thing going on. Some are right, but if you're in doubt, left is usually the way to go. So I'm going to make a little turn here. Going to want to start my descent pretty rapidly here. I'm going to pull out a little throttle and trade altitude for speed. Right to the green band there. Yep, starting to see the airport. I think that's it right there. And again, we want to get right to about 1,700 feet, and we're coming up on that. So, Romeo traffic, November 172 Sierra Papa, coming up into runway 18, and we're going to be downwind for 18. Is that the airport right there? Oh, I've lost some altitude, so let's give it some good juice and get back up to our pattern altitude. And yep, that's the airport. So we're going to get about this far. In real life, I tend to line up with this road. Give it a little more gas so that we can get back to where we expect to be. We're a little low, that's fine, but we want to have some altitude to do what we need to do. So yeah, 1,600, that'll be close enough. So in a normal 172 that has carb heat, we would want to kind of start pulling the carb heat right about now, at midway down. And then when we get a beam the runway here, and we are too close, when we get a beam where we want to land, we're going to drop the throttle down to 15. We're going to start to pull back a little bit. The idea is to keep it right around 1,500 RPM. Try to maintain our altitude by pulling back. We're trading speed right now. So now we're into this white arc right here. We can give it flaps 15, which is the first detent. Our nose is going to pop up. That's okay. We're going to push it back down. We're going to stay descending. We're going to look back. And if we see the runway here, yeah, we've gone plenty. So now we can make our turn. Remember to give it some rudder. Get that ball centered right there. We're doing fine. We're at about 1,200 feet. Just had the 500 AGL call out. Going to go ahead and add another 15 degrees of flaps. Look to our left. Try to line up with that runway. I'm doing way too steep of a turn in this, but that's fine. It's a flight sim. We'll work it out. I'm going to add some more power because I can't see the runway. I think we've overshot it by quite a bit, actually. But that's the weird part about view and angles and everything that I keep running into with flight sims. It's, to be honest, a little harder than the real thing. So we're going to kick some rudder in here, try to steer that nose where we need it to. We're going to give it a lot of gas. In fact, question is, can I save this or are we doing a go around? Looks like I might be able to save this, so let's give it a shot. Now we're high on the glide slope, so pull this power back. Honestly, we probably have this runway made at this point, so we can pull all the power out. You're going to have this desire to pull back. Do not do that. We're currently high. The real airport doesn't have a PAPI like this one, those 4 dots on the left. It should be 2 white, 2 red if we're on the right glide slope. This has a displaced threshold. And yeah, I jacked that up. So I pulled power in the wrong spot. So we're going to use aerodynamic braking here. And we may as well throw on the real brakes because it's just a flight sim. In the real plane, you don't want to do that too much. Of course, in the real plane, I don't get a kitty landing on me, which, I mean, does impact your performance slightly. Throws my weight and balance off completely because I couldn't jerk at the last minute. This adorable thing. But Jane and I lived, so maybe for the next installment, we'll look at our next steps. Thanks for joining me.